Welcome again to another episode of Ask Your Doctors, where you, the audience, actually set the agenda for us. In many of these shows, we organize what we can organize and we bring a broadcast to you and we tell you what we want to tell you. However, this is different. You go to our socials, you interact with our pages, you read out on articles on our website, and then you come back and you say, I saw this on your website, I saw this on your Facebook, on your Twitter, on your Instagram, and now I have questions. And what do? We go and look for experts. So you bring us simple questions, we look for sophisticated people to give us simple answers to your questions. This is Ask Your Doctors. I am Dr. K, and I'm your host. And I'm not traveling alone, I am traveling with my co-host, Dr. Tiny Minga. Doc, how are you?
Good day, how are you?
I'm all right.
You're good.
Yes, Doc. We have a treat.
And,
We
today?
have a treat, and it's not just the two of us this time around.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And we are fortunate to be joined by our dynamite in small packages, our resident virologist. Ladies and gentlemen, if this lady does not inspire those moms and girl children out there, as well as boy children, I don't know who will inspire you. Dr. Bonolo Mashishi, how are you?
Hi, Dr. K. Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be back and nice to meet you.
Okay, so logic would dictate, without a resident virologist, the content that we are trying to deliver here, which is supposed to be current, relevant, and helpful, would not be any of that because we are in the midst of your disease.
My disease.
Your-
Yeah.
So, Doc, tell us. I am saying here we should inspire girl children, boy children. We should inspire parents to motivate their children to study. Doc, how did we get to where we are to be able to give information to the public? What are your qualifications, and without telling us your age? And how long did you study? And how difficult are you finding it?
Okay, yeah. So really, I do hope I inspire somebody out there. There certainly is a need and a demand for what I do. I'm a clinical virologist by profession. I'm a medical doctor. I obtained my undergraduate medical degree at UKZN. After completing my internship and community service, I then went into a specialist trainee program, which we call registrar program. I then specialized for 4.5 years, having completed my master's and a fellowship degree. And now I am practicing as a clinical virologist.
Thank you, Doc.
Yes.
Guys out there, education is valuable. If she can do it, we all can. So let's dig in there and do it. Doc?
And she put more time. I just like it when she says, spend my 4 years. you know, put more time in what you want to do.
You can't afford to be lazy.
Never. More time, more hours, and I think you've done very well for yourself and for this country, madam. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Doc, you know that our audience, we say they set the agenda, ne? But they don't always say what we agree with. Ne? So they see me, they see you, they see Dr. Jazz Party, and then they say, why do you not bring more vibrant doctors to young, vibrant doctors? They should trust us. You know, we got this.
Here we are. She's young, she's vibrant, very capable, and I will repeat it. It's the time that and the effort that you've put in your studies that really inspired us. When we looked for somebody, when we found you, and we said, this is the person who's got the vibrancy, who's got the energy, and of course, you're backed by the youth. I didn't tell them how old you are, but they can guess for themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, thank you.
Around the same ages.
Yeah, you know.
Never
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
Okay, Doc, tell us, in general, we are officially in the fourth wave, okay? There's Omicron. Now, one of the listeners, one of the audience members that sends us questions. By the way, to send us questions, you have to go to Facebook, you have to go to our website, and you have to go to Instagram. You DM us, and you deliver the questions there. Please stay as close to some of the topics that we publish on the website as possible because they are the most relevant ones. And we need to get an expert and ask them a bunch of questions that they can answer confidently, and so it becomes educational though. So, one of the audience members says, who's Omicron and what is Omicron? Just tell us, Doc.
Okay. So, Omicron is a COVID variant. As we all know, variants are just, it's the same virus, you know, the same COVID that we all know, but one that has slightly changed and mutated. So Omicron is our latest variant that has recently popped up. And it's been termed Omicron, obviously, because we use a naming system that has been used by the World Health Organization. So they used the Greek alphabet, and Omicron was the name assigned to this variant.
Okay. I hear they say they are avoiding to call it the South African variant. That's why they give it them.
Yes. I think one of the reasons why they came up with this is because initially when Beta hit, it was deemed like the South African variant, and that was very discriminatory. So they moved away from that system to kind of use something universal.
Okay.
Was that the same one that Trump called China virus?
Yes, I mean, things like the China virus, that was also very problematic at the beginning. So yeah, they're trying to move away from that.
I got two more questions, but then I'm not going to waste your time. I want us to go into travel bans. I mean, why do we hear new variant and then good South African scientists and then we hear travel ban? So I would like you and Doc to actually wrangle it out, because Doc insists whenever we get a chance to talk about travel, he insists we should cut down on travel either way. And I would like you to elaborate for us how is this relevant? We know we've got our own lockdowns where shops get closed, certain kinds of shops. So one question says here, does Omicron still have the same symptoms as the previous ones?
Yes, it's the same virus that's slightly changed. It's still causing the same symptoms that you would experience previously, the headaches, the fever, the cough, the tiredness. So nothing really has changed in that regard.
Okay. And it mutated why?
That's a very interesting question. The why is a little bit harder to answer, but it's normal for viruses to do and behave the way this is behaving. Okay. Viruses tend to kind of befriend us. They want to live with us. They want to exist and be happy amongst us. So they adapt themselves to live amongst us. Okay. So the changes that we are seeing, the mutations that we are seeing, is simply the virus doing what it's naturally made to do, and that is change to adapt to us.
Okay, cool. Now, I would like Dr. Minga to tell you why he thinks we shouldn't travel.
Okay.
And then you may elaborate for us why travel bans are relevant to this whole thing. I mean, there's already enough lockdowns we are looking at, towards Christmas. You can't buy stuff, So...
Doc, and, in my clinical experience, over the past 3 weeks, I think that's when we started having this Omicron. Every small gathering where people are, and mind you, I'm sure you mentioned it yourself, the symptoms are not as heavy or as robust as of the previous one that we've had. And people, it's a children's party. You have, your child has got about 10, 15 other friends. They go to this party, children's party. And adults are there as well, to overlook, the fun of the kids. And 3 days later, we get a knock on our door from the mothers. Listen, my daughter is coughing, she's feverish, she's got a headache. And of course, we'll ask, where did your daughter go to? She went to the party. It was a children's party. And we just heard that 1 or 2 of those who were at the party, they have tested positive for corona. And of course, the natural thing for me as a treating doctor, family practitioner, is to say, and hence I advise people to travel as little as possible. Yes, you can travel. If you go to the Kruger National Park, animals don't have corona. You can go there.
Hey, some
But
hippos were isolated now. Was it
it's a-
hippos?
So, so
Not sure about the
avoid, the bottom line is you avoid where there's a group of people. Because those people, amongst those people, one of them could be carrying this virus and without clear symptoms. And from my experience over the past 3 weeks, is that the symptoms are very vague, are not like the previous ones. Those ones, the first ones were really killing. I mean, you could tell from the guy, the way the guy is talking, he's coughing, chest pains, headache, muscle aches, everything that you can put in a plate. But with this one, more than half of the people that we have tested and tested positive are people who are actually doing the normal thing. They have to travel to Botswana. They want to travel to Uganda. They come here not knowing, not even thinking that they may be positive. And the results come back positive.
Or they come back from Italy.
Yeah,
Like our first case.
yeah. So it begs the question. I mean, do we really need this huge exodus of people? I don't care where you come from. I come from Limpopo. I'm thinking, should I go there now, or should I postpone it? And of course, I will hear from you later on, Doc. This wave, if it is a wave, I'm sure it will last for 2 to 3 months. It will get to be quiet again. Okay, so is it not better for our own health and for the own health and safety of all South Africans? Stay where you are, travel minimally. If it's urgent, yes. There are certain things that you cannot avoid, like for example funerals. But you cannot go and organize a wedding this time of the year when the numbers are rising. I mean, yesterday we had almost 20,000 people who tested positive. Okay, yes, I understand that the number of people who have died as of yesterday is probably less than 20 or less than 30. I can't remember the actual figure. But just to go through that process of being positive, and you have to quarantine, and you have to stay at home and do very little, it's not the nicest thing, particularly this time of the year. So I would rather stay where I am, being safe, not going to organize a party, not going to have many people coming to my house, and if they do, of course, because I can do it. I have rapid tests in my house, whereas people come in, I can test, but not everybody has got that.
That's another thing I wanted. I saw a guy on another broadcast. They were saying that they had a Thanksgiving in America. It was actually the Surgeon General in the US. He said when people walked into the house for a Thanksgiving dinner, they actually did a rapid
Of
test
course,
on everybody.
yeah.
So is that a thing now
No,
going
it's not
forward?
the thing. I mean, look, we had a golf day for the Army 3 weeks ago at Stein City. Well, I'm vaccinated, I've got my certificate, but they still insisted that before you step in, do a rapid test. There was a little bit of a delay, but it was worth it. We knew that whoever was there it tested negative. So you cannot afford to, I cannot afford to have people in my house that I don't know where they come from, where they've been to. Even my kids, I tell them, get out of this house. If you may be coming from a party, but I tell the boys, if you're coming here, a rapid test, we have to do that. Just to make sure that we are protected. But the problem is, Dr. K, is that not everybody can afford that. Do you understand? You cannot, it's not everybody who can afford or be able to interpret those results.
Yeah, or even do a proper test
Do
anyway.
a proper testing. So why bother? Why bother people? Why visit people's houses? Why go to the wedding? Why go to a Lobola party at this time of the year when we are on the 4th wave?
Yeah.
Doc, based on what Dr. Minga has said, okay, let's get over one thing for the benefit of our people that watch this show. Fine. Our scientists were not in the wrong, right?
No.
No.
Okay,
No.
cool. That's out of the way.
Yeah.
And 2, it is possible that there was a bit of overreaction from the international countries.
Yes.
Maybe
and
not.
no. Yeah.
Okay, for I was going to ask you this. Can you handle for us what Doc has said?
Sure.
Local travel, as well as the dynamics that get involved with international bans. Which part of it is justifiable? And just give us your last word on that one, on the international travel.
I think you've raised some really important points there, and a lot of them are issues that are very critical, and people need to consider that. I think, I mean, a pandemic doesn't happen out of the blue. There's a lot of influence related to travel. I mean, you think about it, the virus started in China and it moved across the world. So obviously travel has played a very, very important role in getting us to where we are. So when Omicron hit, with just what we know about the virus, people obviously got a bit nervous and people worried about it spreading to other places. Unfortunately, it's already all over the world. You know, over 60 countries have reported it. So restricting travel was really aiming to restrict, you know, getting Omicron in certain countries and allowing people to buy themselves time. I don't think it was correct because obviously it's all over the world now. Certainly, I agree with you. I mean, I would not opt to travel during this time. I would rather stay at home and be safe. And especially now, because now Omicron is also kind of mixing with flu. We don't typically see flu in the summer months, but now we've got flu and we've got Omicron, and they're presenting very similar. You just have a short illness, you're coughing, you're hot, you know, and you don't really know what's going on. Rather isolate at home and stay at home and avoid all those unnecessary things that you mentioned. I think those are very valid points, and I would agree with that.
May I ask, or maybe a comment, if you don't mind, Doc? One of my experiences here, and of course I think it's all over the country, is that we're having more and more younger people getting affected.
Yeah, that's true.
And my reasoning is that these are the people who have never had an opportunity to be vaccinated. Of course, if we follow the national protocol, where they started with health professionals, and then they cascaded down, you know, the years from the elderly, middle age, now they're in the 16th to the 18th, but that now, for now, it has excluded our children who are in the, you know, the 10-year-olds, the 5-year-olds, and these are the ones who are now getting affected more than adults. And my reasoning is that there is valid reason why people should vaccinate, because we don't see a lot of adults
Getting hospitalized now.
either infected, well, they are infected, but you know, like you said, it comes as a mild flu for those people. But for children, it's a real serious sickness. I went to one of the clinics here in Sandton just to go and have a look. The ward is the adult ward, which is almost converted into a children's ward. You don't find as many adults except those who are not vaccinated. So there is good reason, I'm sure you'll agree, that vaccination does to some extent prevent the new infection, not only the infection, but the actual development of a disease itself. Would you agree?
No, I agree with you. We are seeing it a lot more in younger people. And, you know, it's still, people still think because you're young, you're not going to get seriously ill. And I would really discourage people from thinking that. You do need to get vaccinated simply because you never know who you're going to come into contact with. We're living with a group of people who are vulnerable, and you don't know who you might infect. So, yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you.
Okay. So regarding travel, local travel, you're saying reduce it?
I mean, travel, but you know, if you don't really have to, don't go. You can reschedule.
What about quarantining before you go home to Limpopo?
I think that would be carrying it too far.
Yeah, it would be, honestly. You unless there's really a pressing issue.
That's fine.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to our audience. They set the agenda. Someone's asking you, what happened to all the other variants?
They're still there. So what happens typically is we have what we call the alpha dog, the dominant variant at any given time. And right now the dominant variant is Omicron. In the third wave, our dominant one was Delta. Delta is still there, but we're just not seeing it as much as we're seeing Omicron, because Omicron is now the top dog. Yeah.
At practice level, doc, there is a chance that you are isolating when you get your results back.
Of course.
Isolating which variant there is.
Yeah, I think they do, Doc. They do. They've managed to pick one up. You know, though they don't state it on the result itself.
We have ways
Yeah.
of
Going deeper and
of,
seeing
of
what's happening.
sussing out
That's right.
which variants are happening.
Yeah, but
And-
what is important is just to
yeah,
put a blanket
Yeah.
cover and say, look, it doesn't really matter.
it doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
Yes,
it
I was
doesn't
going to
really
say
matter
that it
what
doesn't
you
really
have.
matter.
Yeah, just isolate, take precautions, don't mix up with lots of people. And what I've also added as an advice to my patients is that when there's somebody, one or two people who are infected in the household, go buy disposable, what do you call this? Spoons, you know?
Oh,
Forks and teaspoons, everything that you use once and throw away.
To manage the
To-
spread.
That's how
in
that's
the
how you can
house,
manage
yeah.
the spread. So you don't have somebody who takes the risk of washing those dishes, washing the plate, washing the fork and the knife and the teaspoon and the cup. So use disposable material and package it nicely and throw it away. And in that way, you're cutting down the level of spread and
Yeah.
minimizing it.
Yeah.
So on top of isolation or quarantine, use disposable material in the house.
Or even just frequently disinfecting surfaces because the virus stays on surfaces
Yes.
for a while. Now and again, just go with your disinfectant.
Door handles,
Door handles,
TV
even
remotes,
wash your dishes with
keeping a
disinfectant.
spray in the
Yes,
house.
yes. So it's
from-
not just sanitizing your hands, but also surfaces in the house, the remotes, things that we
Yeah.
commonly touch. Yeah.
Without getting too technical, Doc, one question says, in the world of virology, how does it differ from variants we've had? I think just keep it simple for us. What's the key feature of the mutation? What does it do? Is there anything you can explain now, or is it just been isolated as a different?
So what's been key about Omicron is just the number of mutations that we've seen. It's a lot more than what was previously seen with
So
any
the
of
same
the
variant mutated many times.
No, so the mutations are in multiple areas, if I can keep it simple.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so we found a lot of mutations
Multiple features.
in different areas,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
And the fact that it's airborne, I'm told, it's airborne and it tends to go beyond our usual family meeting 1.5 meters of spread. So
Yeah,
So you're
I
too
think
close
with
to-
Delta it was already established that
Yeah.
COVID is airborne and 1.5 meters might not be sufficient.
Yeah, it's not
But
sufficient.
in terms of what's different with Omicron and the rest of them, at this point it's really related to the number of mutations that we've seen and the areas in which are affected.
Most common symptoms, Doc?
It's the same as flu. Same as flu. Actually, I tell my patients that anything if it smells like flu, it is COVID until proven otherwise.
I also agree with that.
I don't even, sometimes I don't, you tell me what your problems are, because also I'm trying to protect myself. You tell me what you have. Is it a sore throat, earache, headache, fever, chest pains, are you coughing, and muscle aches? To me, that smells like flu. And because it smells like flu, I'll treat it like COVID.
Yeah.
And I'm safe that way, and I propose testing.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree. Yeah.
Okay, we'll get to this part when we go to the where to from here, because we would like to give practical advice to our audience to say, when you notice this, you're a group of friends or you've been to a conference together, waiting together, which you shouldn't do, or in a workspace, what's the protocol? So we will get to that when we get there. And now, what causes waves and how do we prevent them? That's a question from the audience.
How do we prevent them? Really, I think that would be the first point of entry. Preventing them would just be practicing every day what we need to be doing. Washing your hands, sanitizing, keep a safe distance, get vaccinated. Because if we don't do those things, then waves happen. So the waves happen because either the virus has changed its behavior, like we're seeing now, there's a new variant. Another thing that also contributes is our behavior. So typically what we see outside of the waves, people relax. That also creates an environment for waves to happen. And obviously, other factors, you know, environmental factors, those things play a role. So the best advice is to prevent it, and let's stick to what we need to do. Yeah.
So the waves are caused by us.
Yes, we play a role.
To a great,
Yes,
to a great
we
extent.
do play a role.
It's
in
our
that.
behavior.
Yes, it's really not a conspiracy theory at all.
Okay, cool. No, that's fine. Okay, vaccines and the new variant. Anything to tell us, Doc?
There's still a lot going on with the new variant and what we need to learn and what we need to see. But at the moment, really, vaccines are what we have and they work. I mean, just yesterday, SAPA released a statement about booster doses for Pfizer. So if you're eligible, you need to do that. So don't just, you know, write vaccines off because you've heard in the news or you've heard something that they don't work. They still work. And I would encourage people to get vaccinated. So get your shots and get your boosters.
Even against Omicron.
Even against
And then
Omicron.
when it comes to the boosters, Doc, I've taken J&J, I've given Doc J&J for a booster. Should I go for another J&J, or is it better to go for Pfizer, or vice versa?
So internationally, some countries have opted to mix and match the vaccines. In our country, we are not doing that. We are still sticking to, if you got a J&J, that's what you will get for your booster. For Pfizer, the same will apply. There is some evidence to support or not support that, so it really does differ.
And Omicron is more transmissible, Doc?
It is. It looks like it's more transmittable.
Yeah.
Because I mean, look, people haven't really changed in the way they behaved in the first two waves.
Yeah.
They still stick to the, if it's anything wrong that they're doing, they're still doing the wrong things now. But the virus, it's spreading much more quicker. That's why we're seeing more numbers
could
going
that be?
high. So it means this ease of transmission. And it tends to travel slightly longer than what we thought it was, the 1.5 meters. And of course now we know that it is actually airborne.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, it's both ways. Because also the symptoms are not as heavy. They're quick, they're short, they're very subtle.
You can walk
so
around
you're not
with
thinking, yeah, maybe you're still figuring it out. Should I go test? I just have a headache. And by that time, you spread it to like a lot of people. And also, obviously, because the virus itself has changed and its behavior has changed, it makes it easier to spread and so forth. So it is that, you know, battle, and so they kind of help and synergistically work together in that way. Yeah.
So it's
So it's not always the virus.
So it's learned that it can attend more parties with us and it can socialize better.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And we allow it to. We allow it to.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So let's touch a little bit on if someone suspects that there is a COVID outbreak in their vicinity, or they think they've been exposed. Let's start with the exposure. I think I've been exposed. What's the first point of call, Doc? What must I do?
Yeah, well, go see a health practitioner,
Okay.
you know, and we'll advise you.
Okay.
Obviously, if you're brave, we'll examine you,
Okay.
but we may advise you. Most of the things that we do, if you call me from home and say, listen, I've got these kind of symptoms, I love that, to do a virtual consultation, just to avoid contact with patients, because sometimes you can end up with a problem yourself. We've got a few who still manage to come to our offices. You cannot avoid, you can't chase them away, but of course you take precautions. So out of the symptoms and the picture that you see of a person, a live picture that you see of the person, you can make up your mind. Treat, suggest testing, and of course based on what the results are saying, then you can go ahead and, yeah, but I treat it, like I said, if it smells like flu, I treat like COVID.
Okay. Doc,
And
let's
it's safer to
get
do
past this one.
Yeah.
We have learned, I don't know how your protocols work. I've heard that it's a little bit easier for your medical aid to pay for your test if there was a referral from a doctor. Let's help our people to know how they can save a bit of money, because these tests are not cheap. And
No,
so
they're
you don't always test one person at a time.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see, Well, I must say, I must come back and bash our government for this, to have allowed that to happen. That's number one mistake that they made. The mistake number two,
Which mistake?
of not intervening to try and help the public for those who've got medical aids. They've left the medical aids to make these decisions on their own. We have a crisis in this country. The government should have said, listen, allow those who need to be tested should be tested without any queries. It doesn't matter whether you test 3 or 4 times. If it's necessary, you have to test. That's number one. Number two, the mistake that the government made was to run these things on their own as politicians. These things should have been left, or they should have invited all medical practitioners, wherever they are. And I'll tell you why I'm saying this. Doctors, family practitioners have got a better penetration in this country than anyone else, than the discams and the clinics of this country. Every village where we are, you'll find 1 or 2 or 10 doctors. They should have been allowed, or maybe even help with the facility for the storage of these vaccines. Because the patients, the public believes in their own doctors. So doctors should have been in the forefront of vaccinating the patients. And I'm sure Doc will agree with me that by now we'll have gone beyond the threshold of 40 million people if they'd allowed the doctors to do so. But they held up onto the vaccines for themselves for whatever reasons I don't know, but they should have done that right on the beginning. Say, guys, we have a crisis in this country. Raise up your hand, we'll come and deliver you with a fridge if you don't have a fridge, but I suppose every doctor has a fridge in their practices. Supply them with the vaccines, let them deal with their own patients. We'll have reached more than 40 million people in this country.
Or in terms of vaccination?
Yes, they should have allowed the doctors, the general practitioners, to vaccinate the public from wherever they are. Because our penetration as doctors is much higher than any of these big conglomerates where people are going to queue now for the vaccines.
Okay.
So we're still sitting at what number of people? We're still sitting about 26 million or less than 30 million people are vaccinated.
I'm not sure about the
right.
millions. I just
But I
work
can
in
tell
terms
you,
of the
they would
percentage.
have easily, within 6 months or so, we could have reached more than 40 million people and would not be having the problem that we're having in this
I
country.
must disagree here, though, because I mean it's not as simple as that. I mean, vaccines had their challenges. We still face vaccine inequalities. Access to getting vaccines internationally, that was a problem from the get-go. I mean, and also just vaccine uptake for a number of reasons. People are still fearful of getting vaccines. So there are a number of issues. And I don't really think it's a right or wrong way. I mean, everybody can, you know, have their views. There's never a right or wrong way, especially in a crisis situation.
I think she's very kind.
Like that. In terms of who was right, who was wrong, certainly we could have been a little bit further, but I think there are a lot of factors that played a role in that. Yeah.
But I mean, let's face it, most of the people who are querying these so-called vaccines are the people who know that they have their own doctors. That is my experience. And they are surprised, why are you doctors not involved? And the question that I'm raising, the issue that I'm raising is because this is the issue that is being raised by the patients themselves.
Okay.
And they are saying, yes, they don't
Oh
want to
yes, they are saying it could have been easier for them to get the
That's right,
vaccine.
because after all,
if they didn't have,
they listen to us more than the politicians.
Okay.
We asked you this last time.
Yeah,
Shame.
we discussed this
No,
last
it's
time.
okay.
So our penetration, I still want to raise to underline this fact that the doctors' penetration, the family practitioners' penetration in the country is much higher. And we have a certain amount of respect from the community. And if they respect you, they like you, they know they can come to you, and it's easy for you to convince them to take up a jab. That any politician going to stand in the podium somewhere and say, take up a vaccine.
So I would like to ask the last 2 questions. Then we pause, and then we look at the where to from here. Okay, so that our people have direction. Now, from a travel perspective, there's still a little bit of Christmas to save. Let's say people do travel. What's the safest way they can do it? Let's start with you, Doc.
Yeah. The safest way, I mean, it depends on where you're traveling, internationally or locally.
No, we know internationally, we're not going.
No,
Going up and down Africa,
get your
yeah.
vaccine. Get your vaccine. Most places, including in Africa, they will require you to provide
Okay.
evidence that you're vaccinated, fully vaccinated, meaning
Okay.
that you've received your 2 doses if you're going for Pfizer. Some countries don't use Pfizer, but 2 doses, or your single shot of J&J. So you need to
Okay.
provide evidence for that.
Okay.
Then you also need to have done your testing. Some require 72 hours prior to travel. This is, again, if you're traveling within the African continent. Locally, obviously, if you're going from one province to another, it's not really a requirement to provide evidence of a negative test. And some countries still, despite having been vaccinated and testing negative, will ask you to quarantine for a certain period once you arrive in that country. Some countries have opted not to ask people to quarantine if you're fully vaccinated and have evidence of a negative test. And obviously, over and above, you still need to maintain the normal precautions, which we've really emphasized throughout the show and the episode. Wear your mask, keep a safe distance, be in ventilated spaces, sanitize your hands, and
And only associate with vaccinated people.
yeah.
Doc, what's your advice on travel regarding COVID?
Well, I still believe, look, if it's not necessary to travel, if it's not binding, if you're not pressed for traveling, stay where you are and minimize, because I may be having corona and
Doc
I decide
wants
to
to
go,
kill Christmas.
decide to go to my village and go spread it over out in the village. It's not worth it.
I'll have to be honest. I have only been back in the Free State once in the last 18 months.
You left some corona there.
No, I made sure my mother was vaccinated first before I took her out for 2 days. And then I left her there, I came back. And I made sure I was vaccinated and whatnot. And we were with children, but we were practicing lots of precautions and whatnot. So, okay. And then, Doc, just a concern from one of our audience members regarding the, very briefly, what do you know about the ongoing outbreak of rabies in the country, somewhere around KZN?
KZN, yeah.
And please tell us what rabies is.
So rabies is a virus caused by a virus called rabies virus.
They call it marabi.
Yes.
Marabi.
Yes. So unfortunately, we still have rabies in South Africa, in provinces such as KZN, Eastern Cape, Limpopo, Mpumalanga. Typically,
Limpopo is everything.
Oh, yeah. We're rich there.
typically in the rural areas. So humans typically get rabies when they interact mostly with dogs that have rabies. Rabies is a deadly virus. So if you get rabies as a dog, as a human, and it's not attended to, you will die. There's no treatment for rabies.
The dogs get it from?
So more often they get it from other animals, other dogs that have not been vaccinated against rabies. So in as much as rabies is deadly and there's no cure for rabies, it's 100% preventable. We prevent it by vaccinating our dogs. And should you as a human get either a dog bite or even get licked by a dog that you suspect may be rabid, you can actually get a vaccine and prevent getting the disease of rabies. Because once you get the disease, unfortunately, there's nothing to be done.
That's very helpful. Okay.
And of course, with your rabies, just to add to what doctor said, these dogs get bitten by animals. And one of the commonest one is bats. They go to the bushes, the lower part of the mountain, they're bitten by bats. Bats carry this virus, and then they start getting mad, and they become intolerable. This is one of the symptoms. They become like they're mad. They run around, and when they hear the sound, particularly the sound of water, there's this shushing of the water, it makes them so mad. And they start chasing people. They want to bite them, and even if it scratches you, you must know that you're in danger. If you come across such a dog, and it bites you, run to the...
Especially if it's unprovoked.
That's right.
So if you have a dog that just
All of
attacks
a
you
sudden
from
it's,
nowhere, that is a sure sign that there's something wrong with that dog. And unfortunately, it typically happens to younger children because children like playing with dogs and they commonly get attacked. So more often the cases with rabies that we see affecting children. So it's always a problem.
And the symptoms that you see in dogs is similar symptoms that you see with humans who have rabies. The water is one thing that they cannot tolerate. The sound of water, flowing water, it just irritates their brain. I don't know why. And they start foaming. I'm sure you have seen them. They start foaming in the mouth. And they have this terrible headache, and they're so uncontrollable in their behavior. Then you know that this is typically.
So for dogs, it is important that dogs get vaccinated
Against
generally.
rabies. Against rabies,
Yes.
yes.
But not necessarily a general rule for humans unless there is a reason to worry.
Yes. So all dogs must be vaccinated against rabies. That's the only way we can stop rabies in humans. Humans will get the vaccine only after having been exposed to a dog that is suspected to have rabies.
Okay.
Yes.
So that leads us.
And if you're a
And
job,
yeah.
if you're a job maker, you go to Eastern Cape, you go to northern part of KwaZulu-Natal,
And Limpopo.
you go, don't mention Limpopo, we hardly ever see people rabies there. But of course we do see it. Please, it's advisable to get a rabies chip, and we offer that as a package
Okay.
as well.
Or
to
travel
to
medicine.
travel, yes.
Okay.
We do offer that.
Okay, good. No, that's fine.
Yes, for travel.
So that leads us to humans don't necessarily have to vaccinate for rabies unless there's a concern.
There's a
been
concern,
an
and
attack.
obviously, as rightfully said, when you're traveling. So there are countries in the world that are still categorized as having a problem with rabies. So for instance, if you're traveling from, let's say, America to South Africa, you would be required to vaccinate against rabies because South Africa is still considered as a country with
Shame.
a problem with rabies. Yeah.
Okay, and then with the other information that we have shared with our audience, we need to tell them where to go from here. So we've managed to discuss a lot of things, and the most recent ones that do deal with viruses as well is we've discussed what needs to happen when you suspect that you are COVID positive. You consult your GP immediately and you take it from there. Cool. Now the next one, if you remember, we are in December. We recently handled.
That rhymes. Remember,
Yes.
we're in December. Yeah.
Oh yes. Anyway, so we recently handled very well a topic on a special feature on World AIDS Day. Now, with all this confusion regarding viruses, vaccines, and whatnot, sadly, we're still not having a readily available vaccine for HIV. Fine, but we have sort of taken it to the back benches, and now I am vigilant about what to do with COVID, but I'm not vigilant enough about what to do with HIV. Doc, if I would like to maintain knowledge of my status, what do I do? HIV.
You know, I don't know if Doc is going to agree with me here, but from the practical point of view, and this is what I tell patients, you know, because some of them, they want to know, these are all viruses. The difference between coronavirus and HIV virus. I said, you know, coronavirus, HIV virus, when it gets into your body, it will start negotiating with you so that you can live together as friends until, and for the longest time.
And it depends on how well you negotiate,
You
whether
negotiate,
you
you
will,
negotiate
you will
the
both
terms.
live long enough.
Yeah, because it also wants to live, and you want to live as well. So if you have it, don't worry. Just negotiate with your virus, and take the necessary treatment, and you live happily. I can tell you, you can live for 30, for 40 years. You don't have that luxury with COVID, particularly with the previous two variants that we've had. The corona is selfish. It gets into your body, it wants to eat you up,
It
and
dictates
it's quick.
terms.
It dictates the terms on how it wants to live.
Okay.
And if it means that it has to kill you, it will do so. minimum period is about a month, and then you're gone if you don't take precautions. So you're dealing with two viruses here. One of them you can negotiate, the other one you have no choice. So if you haven't vaccinated, that's the only way you can beg and negotiate your life if you are vaccinated.
So,
And to interject, I think, I mean, negotiating with HIV, I like that analogy. But to get to that 30 to 40 years, there's also, you know, T's and C's. All these viruses have a fine print, and there's always terms and conditions. And with HIV, if you're infected, you have to take your treatment.
Of course.
You have to make sure that you are suppressed, so your virus numbers are very, very low. Otherwise, you don't get the opportunity to get to your 30 to 40 years. With COVID, you're right, you have to get vaccinated. In that way, that is the fine print. And, you know, that's the bargain that you have to play.
where to from here? If I want to maintain knowledge of my status for HIV,
So
where to
with-
from here?
For HIV, I think you need to test regularly. If you're not,
Where do I test?
you can test, you can buy the kits at the local pharmacy and test at home. If it's positive at home, you need to go to your GP and confirm those results. You can present to your local clinic. You can present to your GP's office. So there are also drives now and again where they have pop-up stations where you can test. So there are lots of testing opportunities for HIV. If you're already HIV infected, it's not a death sentence anymore. You have to just take your treatment. Also, if you are engaging in sexual practices with a partner that's infected and you're negative, there are ways in which we can assist. You can condomize religiously, or during every sexual encounter condomize. And we have what we call PrEP, which is a pre-exposure prophylaxis. It's similar to your ARVs. You take the tablet before you're going to be sexually exposed to somebody who is HIV infected. And unfortunately, in an area like South Africa, we have high rates of gender-based violence and rape. Should you get raped, unfortunately, there's also precautions that can be taken there. You can take ARVs for a month period. We call that post-exposure prophylaxis, and you can take that to prevent HIV. Yeah,
So this is the where to from here.
that is the way to go. Yes.
Okay. Doctors, we cannot have this forever. I can see you are enjoying yourselves. This is Ask Your Doctors. And this is where the audience sets the agenda. I think the majority of the questions today didn't come from me. They were coming from the audience. And always when we are speaking to Dr. Mashishi, the audience gets excited. I suppose you're handling COVID and there's a lot of questions from the audience. So please do go mainly to our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and website. And do post your questions there. We do take them all down. And we will ask a specific person that will answer them most competently to come to our show and make it look as simple as possible, as the experts have done it today. Dr. Bonolo Mashishi, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Minga, thank you very much.
As always, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.